Hey guys, it's Kristen and welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be doing my October reading wrap up for you guys. And let me tell you, I read a ton of books this month. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I read 14 books this month, which is even more than I read in August when I had some time off. And I think like 7 of these books alone was just from when I was on vacation. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I didn't even read that much at the hotel. Like, I read mostly at the airport, and I read like while waiting in line for rides and stuff like that. And like when we were like driving between like our hotel and the parks. So honestly, I didn't even really like read at night when I came home because I was just so tired that I just immediately like would go to bed. Like, I think we came home at like 9 o'clock the one night. Out. Like, just out. It was insane. But you know what? I also like blew through most of my physical TBR. I think I mentioned in last week's video when I was making my TBR for November that like I've kind of run out of books at this point. Like, I'm waiting on books to come in that I bought this month to read. So if those don't come in before I finish reading like the 1 or 2 books that I have available, like I'm gonna have to start going to the library to get books because I've already bought all the books that I've allotted myself to buy this month. So this one's gonna be a really long video. So without further ado, let's get into it because I already know it's gonna be super long because I have big opinions on a lot of the books I read this month. But let me know how you like the bang situation. I realized this week that with the way my bangs are cut right now, I can do the side swept bangs that I've been doing for like the last like 13, 14 years of my life, or I can do the across bang situation. So it's kind of fun to like switch things up. I don't know how I entirely feel about it. I mean, they're not exactly cut for this style either. Like, it's just kind of like a little mishap that they kind of fit this way. So let me know how you feel about it. But the first book that I'm going to talk about is When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLain. And this was the book that I was telling you guys that I like read like 20 pages and it really wasn't hitting me. And like, the reason why I really wasn't interested when I first started reading this book is because it starts off with her in by the way, I'm giving this a 4, so I did end up liking it. But like, it starts off with her like in a hotel, like not feeling really good about herself, and uh like she's pumping breast milk to like leave in the refrigerator. So it's very clearly like something has happened to like her child, or when like she's like not with her husband, like they're kind of like separated, and she's going back to her hometown. So at first I was just like, this doesn't really fit the vibes, but I really did end up liking it in the end. It didn't go as I expected at all towards the end either, so especially compared to like a lot of other murder mysteries. So in this book, she goes back to her hometown to kind of like take a load off. She is a police officer who works on missing children cases and trying to find missing children. And sorry, the weather change here in Texas has really gotten to me. Like, it was like 40 or 50, 60 degrees out, which I really didn't, I enjoyed the weather, but like the change from like the 40-degree change in weather around here is really like killing my voice. Anyway, so she goes back home to like kind of just take a load off, and she ends up finding out that people have been going missing in her hometown slash around her hometown, and she kind of starts investigating. Like, she's helping out like the local sheriff who's there, and like they kind of had a thing back in high school that they never really like fully pursued. So like you can kind of feel some tension there. And she ends up also realizing that when she was young in high school, she had a friend who went missing, and it was this person's older sister, and she realizes that person has come back to town, like, unexpectedly. Like, they never thought that he would come back to town, because, like, they kind of had a really crappy childhood, and then his sister disappeared all of a sudden, and it really just wasn't, like he left, and they just thought he wouldn't come back, you know? And so he has actually been back in town, and he's an artist taking up his dad's profession, and you kind of go through her connecting all the dots of, like, okay, well, this missing girl, because the missing girl that is the most recent missing girl is from there's a famous couple that lives in the town, and she's their adopted daughter, and, like, some things have been going on at home. Like, her dad was having an affair, and, like, him and her mom were arguing and fighting, and she just kind of wanted to escape. And she's, like, connecting the dots of, like, oh, she went missing, like, she took these photos here to, like, look really, like, grown up, and, like, other people that have kind of gone missing in the area, and it all ends up coming to a head, and it's actually the person whose sister went missing all those years ago. He's the one hiding and taking these girls, and what's even worse is that he's actually the one who killed his sister, because his, like, mom left the family, and his older sister was like, I'm leaving too now. Like, a couple of years after, like, she was old enough to, like, leave, she was like, I'm gonna leave, like, this is where I'm leaving now. And her brother was like, you're not leaving, and ended up killing her. And, like, he confronts the main character, and then, like, she ends up, I can't remember if she ends up killing him or if he does get put away, but, like, he confronts her, because, like, they find the girl and they save her, and, like, they're all searching for this guy, and she either ends up killing him or putting him away. I don't remember which one, but she decides that it's time to go home and, like, go back to her life and deal with what's happening there. And you find out that what happened was that, because I thought that, like, her child had been taken, or, like, maybe, like, it had drowned in the pool while she was supposed to be watching, but, like, she got high or something, and that's what happened to her kid. Like, I thought that it was more of, like, an accident on her fault, but you end up finding out that, like, she strapped her kid into their car seat and answered the phone and was talking to someone, and didn't realize that their kid climbed out of the car seat and was, like, walking into the road, and their neighbor hit their kid and killed their kid, is what happened. And, like, the little baby is still alive. So it was unexpected. I ended up liking it, because I went into this thinking that I was not going to like it at all, and I was very much just reading it to read it and say that I did it, and I ended up liking it, actually. So it was really nice. Alrighty, the next book that I'm going to talk about is The Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And this book, I cannot put this book down. I read this book because Sarah Caroli read this book, and she has been, like, raving about it. In most videos where she's recommending books, she talks about this book and how much she loves this series. And so I really wanted to read it, and oh my god, this got a 5. I could not put this down. I literally stayed up till, like, 3 in the morning to finish this book because it was so freaking good. Oh my god, it was like a day before work too. It wasn't even like it was the weekend me staying up. No, I stayed up on, like, a Sunday night to read this because I wanted to finish it because it was so freaking good. Like, this book is just, it's very cinematic in the way that it's told. Like, I feel like I'm watching a movie with all of the detail that's in here, and the description and the conversation, and I just felt like I was watching a movie, and I loved it. It gave me, like, Carnival Row vibes. If you guys have seen that series, it's on Amazon Prime, and Orlando Bloom and Cara Delevingne play in it, and it's about, like, fae and fairies and, like, satyr stars, the people who have the bottom half of a goat. And this gave me big Carnival Row vibes, because, like, there's the nice part of town, and then there's the not nice part of town, which is where Kaz and Injun and Jesper and, like, everybody else kind of, like, hang out or, like, live. And So it gave me that big, like, clear distinction vibes between everybody, and there's people who have powers in here, and so it gave me that kind of a vibe. And like there's a war going on between like people that have powers and people that don't have powers, and like there's a fraction of people that live in the north that like absolutely hate any kind of Grisha, and they're trying to like exterminate them essentially. And of course, there's like a cute little gay love story in here between Jesper and Waylon, which like I was kind of picking up those vibes, and then it was confirmed for me on a very specific page, and I was like, I knew it. But like, what, like all of them going on this journey to like find this one person who has like the recipe to make like this super power drug for Grisha that ends up getting them like super addicted and makes them sick when they don't take it anymore. Like they're going on this journey to find this person because they don't want this person to be used against them. And like going throughout the journey, they have Matthias with them, who is a person who he's a Freudian soldier, and those are the people that do not like any kinds of Grisha. And he was actually betrayed by what's her name? He was betrayed by Nina, and they kind of have like their whole little relationship situation going on. And then you have Kaz and Injin having their kind of little relationship going on, and Waylon and Jesper. And like throughout this whole like book, I was totally waiting for Matthias to like betray them, because like that's what he would do, because he's like a Freudian soldier and they're like attacking his homeland. So like I totally expected him to like betray them. And then like as it went on, like they get to the big party where they're trying to like sneak in, and he does betray them, and I was like, I hope it's just a ploy. Like there's no way you can do this to me now. Like I just hope that like it's not real, that it's a fake or something. And it ended up being fake, and I was like, oh thank God. But like this book, like it had lots of twists and turns, and it made me angry, and it made me want to cry in the end. And then like you found out that like, because in the beginning of the book when they're going on their journey, you find out that like these people like all the other gangs in town try to stop them from going on this journey. And especially Pekka tries to stop them, and he's like basically like the best high gang member ever in this little like universe. And Kaz hates him because he's the reason why his brother died, and why Kaz has gone through everything that he's gone through, because they moved to the city and they started working for this guy who owned a bakery and like would send them out on missions. And then they were like, oh, we're really gonna hit the jackpot on like the sugar trade or something like that. And he's like, but you guys can't you can't put money into it, because if you put like it's too big of a risk. Like only high rolling players can like put their money into this venture. And Kaz's brother is like, no, like I have money, like I want to do it. And so he does it and steals all of their money and just takes off. And they realize that it was a complete hoax and that he wasn't who he said he was. And then his brother ends up dying because of a sickness that comes through, and because they're on the streets and they get sick, and his brother ends up dying. And then like they also think that Kaz is dead, so they throw him in with like a bunch of the dead bodies. He's gotta like crawl out and like swim to shore, and he uses his brother as a buoy. Like it's crazy. I'm like, that person has no clue who Kaz is. And Kaz is like, I'm going to destroy you, basically, in the end. But you find out that when Pekka tried to stop them from going, the reason why they knew where they were going is because of Jesper. And Jesper was the one who betrayed them. I was like, oh my God, mind blown. And like, the way they phrase it too is they put it like right at the end of the page, and you're like, oh my god, Jesper would never do that. Like, I can't believe they're even writing about this. And then like you flip the page and it was like, oh, he was talking like he had some big job going on while he was gambling, and that's how they found out where they were going. So it wasn't really like they betrayed him, you know. But like the page placement, oh my god. And like there's one quote in this book that I can just see. Like I can see it in my brain. And it's when they first get on the ship, they actually bring someone who is trying to kill them with them onto the ship and trap them. And they're sitting there, and it's Waylon, Kaz, and Jesper. And like Kaz is like laying into this person, like trying to figure out how he knew where he was going, who planned it, who did what, like what was happening, what was going on, why did this even occur, kind of situation. And he ends up promising the dude, like, if you tell me everything, like, we'll drop you off at the next port, like, we'll let you go. And so the guy ends up telling him what happened, and then Kaz, like, throws him overboard. And Waylon's like, how could you do that? Like, you lied to that dude. Like, I can't believe you. And, like, Kaz is covered in blood, and Jesper just looks at Waylon, and he's like, Waylon, I don't know if those fancy tutors ever taught you, but you don't start threatening the person covered in blood. And, like that just, it was cinematic gold. I love this movie. I love this book. I cannot wait for Crooked Kingdom to come in this month for me to be able to finish the series. There's absolute gold. Alright, so the next book that we're going to talk about is The Sorceress, which is the third book in the Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel series that I've been reading. And this one, I'm only giving like a 3.5. Like, it was better than the first book. I don't think it was as good as the second book. Like, it was what it was. So in this book, they are in Paris, and Josh is kind of teamed up with Dee and Nicolo, and they take him to Mars, and Mars awakens Josh's powers, and he also blesses him with the gift of strategy. And so they kind of go through the arc of getting the kids to Gilgamesh, who is kind of crazy. Like, he's one of the first human people that were made by Prometheus, and he was granted immortality, and that immortality kind of fractured his mind. So, like, he knows everything and nothing at the same time. And so he teaches them the art of water. Dee fails to capture them at the big battle that they had at the compound with Shakespeare and Palladius. And they end up, and when they're at that battle, they send in the Archon Centauros, who's like the god of the hunt, and is super like super bad, creepy dude. And they end up fleeing through Stonehenge back to San Francisco, I think it is. And so I would only give this a 3.5. And they end up saving, I think in this they end up saving Perry, because they like give her some of their life force, because she's on the island roaming free, and she like goes down in the bowels of the prison, and like a creature like awakens and starts attacking her, and then they like give her their Aurora through the kind of like portal that they're using to like scry and like see her, and she's able to use that to kind of semi hurt the Sphinx that's on the island. So I'm only gonna give that one a 3.5. It was fine. Okay, so the next book that we're gonna talk about is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. So this is the first book that she ever wrote. Yeah, this is the first book that she ever wrote. She's also the author of the London Seance Society, which I gave a 5-star last month. So I was really looking forward to reading this book, especially because I think this book attracted me before the London Seance Society attracted me to reading her stuff. And so I was super excited because I thought this would be right up my alley. But honestly, I only gave this a 3.5. Like, this was not what I had anticipated going into this. Like, I thought it was going to be more of I knew that there was going to be poisoning of men for like doing wrong deeds, that kind of a thing, but I thought that it would be more like finding a whole web that this person had weaved by being this apothecary, and instead it really wasn't. So our main character, Carolyn, her and her husband are going to England. They're going to London for their 10-year anniversary, but she ends up going alone because she found out either the week or the week before either the week of the trip or the week before the trip, that he was actually cheating on her with someone at work. And she was like, and the way that he reacted to it was very like, oh, I'm already done with her, like, nothing ever happened, we just kissed. And then like she finds out that like they were sleeping together, and like he's just like, oh well, I took care of the problem, like I'm not seeing her anymore, and like doesn't want to deal with like the fact that she's hurt, or like the emotions that she has behind it, or like any of the actual situation. Like he's just trying to like brush it off and be like, oh yeah, it happened, but it's fine, I'm not doing it anymore, like it doesn't matter. And so she goes to London by herself, and like you kind of find out that like she gave up her dreams for him because like they were trying for a baby, and like originally she wanted to go and be a grad student because I think she got a history degree, and like there wasn't really anything she could do with that, and so she wanted to go off to London to go to grad school, and she didn't end up doing that because like he was coming into like his financial career, and like he didn't tell her not to go, but like basically like told her not to go, and she wanted to start a family. And so she like just got a job at her family farm that she didn't like, just to do until like they had kids, and like then her husband was always working late. So like she gave up her dreams to be with this man, and like he just like didn't care. So she went to London, and while she's in London, she finds this bottle because she goes to the river and she's like digging through mud to like find treasures and stuff. It's called mudlarking. And like there was a tour guide, and she was like, I want to do what I'm gonna do. So she goes on this tour, even though she doesn't really think that would be fun or like traditional to do in London. And she finds this bottle, and it has an etching of a bear in it. And that is linked to the apothecary side of the story that we get from like 18th century London. And the apothecary, she was a person who women whose significant others were being like unfaithful to them or were like hurting them, she makes potions for them to like get rid of the problem. And the way we're introduced to that character is Eliza comes to Nella, who's the apothecary for her mistress, and you find out that the reason why is because the mistress's husband like was touching Eliza in inappropriate ways. And like there is a scene where like she has a headache, I think, or something, and he gives her like alcohol, and like it gives off like he was going to rape her vibes is what it was giving off. And like he's just like he'll touch, like he'll go, his hands will go underneath her skirt and like touch the back of her knees while she's serving breakfast, which I think is super gross. And like, you know, like things like that. And you find out that Eliza's not the first girl that he's done this to that's worked for him. Like there was a rumor that there was a serving girl who got pregnant and died giving birth to their child, and like nobody knew who the father was, but like from the way that like it's written in the book, as a person reading it, you know that it was like his kid. And so his wife decides to kill him, and when she kills him, Eliza gets her period, and like nobody ever told her what a period was, so then she thinks it's his ghost, and it's like, sweetie, like that's not what that is. And like nobody's ever told her anything or explained to her about it. And so like you go through that arc, and then she goes back to the apothecarist because her mistress like goes away to deal with the emotional trauma of her husband dying, and all of that. And then while Eliza is with Nella, a woman comes in and is like, I want to kill my husband because he's being unfaithful to me, and I want him to die in his lover's arms. Or at least that's the way she presents it. And so Nella goes about making this potion to perform that for her. And when the person comes back, she lets it sleep that she's not giving it to her husband. She's giving it to the mistress who her husband's been sleeping with, and that's who she wants to kill. And Nella's like, no, like, I'm not here to kill other women. Like, I'm here to kill, like, unfaithful men, terrible men, because she's kind of been betrayed in her own life, too. Like, she was seeing somebody, or she had a customer come in back when she was still, like, a regular apothecary, like, helping people in, like, the normal, like, medicinal way. And he came in and was like, oh, my sister's fiance ran off and she's pregnant and she doesn't want to have the baby. Like, what can she do? And so she fixes something to solve that situation. And he gives it to his sister, and whatever happens, and she later is like, they're in love, they're spending all their time together, yada yada yada. Well, she gets pregnant and she tells him, and then she finds out that he uses the same potion on her to kill their baby. And the person that she made the original potion for wasn't his sister. It was his, I can't remember, I think it was his wife. And he just didn't want to have the baby. And, like, she just feels utterly betrayed. And, like, I think that's the first person she ends up killing. And so she's like, no, like, I'm not trying to hurt the mistress, like, no. And the person threatens to tell the police about everything that Nella's been doing for, like, the last, I want to say 40 years, but I think that might have been too long of a lifetime for that time. But, like, threatens to unveil everything that she's done, and that would implicate all of these women that Nella's helped and hurt them. And, like, she's like, fine, I'll do it. And she ends up killing the wrong person. She ends up killing her husband instead of the mistress. And then, like, it gets investigated, and like, they end up like, trying to capture Nella and Eliza. And while that's taking place, Carolyn is the one kind of following the journey, trying to figure out what happened, and she finds the article about the original murder, and finds the article about the original murder, and kind of tracing back through everything. And while this is going on, her husband just decides to come to London. He's like, he calls her and is like, hey, like, I actually want to solve problems with us. I'm coming to London to see you. Like, doesn't ask her, like, because she was like, I need space. I'm going to London by myself. Doesn't ask her how she feels. Like, doesn't even consider the situation. Like, he's just like, I'm coming to London and I'm going to solve this problem. And I was like, the audacity of men. The audacity of men. Like, I was like, dude, no, she doesn't want you. Like, really got my gears burning. And, like, she kind of hides what she's been doing from him, because, like, she's gonna think, like, he's gonna think that's stupid. And they, like, go out to dinner, and they're, like, kind of conversating, and, like, she brings up, like, how she wanted to go to grad school here, and he's like, well, I never told you not to go. You made that decision, not me. And I was just like, dude, like, you are a jerkwad. And like she's talking to this librarian who's helping her with her journey, who I kind of think they got like a little thing going on, you know. But then she like has to put that off because like her husband's coming into town, and like she never told the librarian person about it, and then she kind of is like, oh yeah, like my husband's coming into town, and like it was really interesting. And then so he comes into town, he isn't feeling good, he has like a cold, and she's like, oh, I have I think she was like, oh, I have like eucalyptus in the bathroom you can try using to like breathe better or something like that. And after he does that, like he gets super sick, and like he's being poisoned. And I was like, oh, did the librarian poison him? She didn't. This man was just stupid and drank half a bottle of eucalyptus essential oil, which is poisonous to people. And because like she goes in the bathroom to like get stuff for him, and she's like, did you drink this? And he's like, yeah, you told me to. And she's like, no. And like on the bottle it says like, do not drink, toxic. And she's like, no, I never told you to do that. Like, you just like, and so you end up finding out that he did it on purpose because he's trying to manipulate her. Like, she like fully wants to be on her own. Like, this journey has realized that she wants to be on her own, that like he like she's just like, I love you, I care about you, but like I don't want to be with you, you know? And in his attempts to win her back, he tries to kill himself, or like put himself enough in the hospital that she's then gonna have to take care of him and make him feel better, and then try and make that be so that she falls back in love with him. And I was so annoyed. I was like, this dude is manipulative trash. Like, just absolutely manipulative trash. Hated it. And like, she gets arrested because they think that she tried to poison him, because she has all these notes about the poison things that are poisonous to people, because she's following the story. So then she has to bring the librarian in to try and cover for her, and then like she has to have their husband be like, oh yeah, I drank this. And then that's how like you find out that like he was purposely trying to manipulate her, because he was like, it doesn't matter what I do, like you just can't love me or whatever. And then that's when she figures out that he did it on purpose. And in the end, she ends up applying to grad school and going to live in London to live her best life. And she's doing her dissertation about the murders that she discovered. And when it comes to the murders, so Eliza throws herself into the river because she doesn't want Nella to be arrested, and Eliza feels really responsible for being the reason why Nella would be arrested and all these things would come to light. And so she coming to light, and so she throws herself over the bridge, but right before she does, she drinks this potion that she made, and it's supposed to be like good luck. And she found the potion in a book at a bookstore, where she kind of hit it off with the person working at the bookstore. And like, you think that she's killed herself, and that's how Nella feels too. But then you end up finding out that Eliza did live on, and she had this happy little life with the bookstore person that she met, and it's kind of cute. Like, I liked it a bit more in the end, but it wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. I really did not like the husband figure in here. And you know, it was fine. It's not London Seance material in my opinion, but I don't think I'll get rid of it. So, alrighty. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Necromancer, which is the 4th book in the Nicholas Flamel series. So this one I'm going to give a 4. I like this one better than The Sorceress. And in here, like, they go meet up with their aunt because like they've been off the grid and their parents are like freaking out. So they go meet up with their aunt, and while they're meeting up with their aunt, like, this person who looks just like Scatty is trying to like talk to their aunt, and they're trying to protect her from the aunt. And then like his sister gets captured, and a whole whirlwind happens, and they end up uh Josh ends up learning fire from Prometheus, who teaches him, which is really surprising because like Prometheus swore to never teach anybody ever again. And so he teaches Josh the art of fire, and Joan and Scatty get trapped in another dimension. It's like a dinosaur realm because Nicolo put these ashes on the Legate they were trying to use, and it puts them back into I think the past, but it's actually another world, and it's because the Hook Man wants them there, who's like kind of been pulling the strings. Like he's the one who gave Nicholas the codex in the first place, and like told Perry like who she was gonna marry kind of in the future. And then like D is trying to bring an arch, because like at this point he's been like completely released from the people who like have been his masters. Like they're on the hunt for him now. Like they've declared that he can no longer, like D has to die, and so he wants to bring back this Archon that hates all of the elders and would kill them. And they kind of banished her to like this other dimension, and he wants to bring her back, feed her Josh so that she's not angry, and then set her on all the elders. And Josh doesn't know that, and he's following like D, and like like D just manipulated Josh into thinking that like he's a great person, and he's trying to bring this person, like this elder, back that's gonna like do wonderful great things for the world, and doesn't tell Josh that like basically this person's gonna eat him, because whoever summons her, like she's gonna be super hungry and angry and is gonna eat the first person that she sees. And D teams up with Virginia Dare to try, who's another immortal who is like kind of a bad guy. And when they are bringing this Archon back, Josh's sister and Scatty's sister, Aoife. So it's spelled Aiofe, and I know it's Irish, and I think it's pronounced Ida. I'm not entirely sure. She ends up pushing the Archon back into her otherworldly dimension and is stuck there with her for eternity. And she did it for Scatty, which is really nice, and you know, sisterly sibling love. So that one got a 4. The Warlock is the next book. It's the 5th book, and this one, D is trying to take over the world. Josh still thinks that Dee's a good guy and that Virginia's a good guy, and Virginia teaches Josh air magic, which she actually learned on her own. And like they were really worried about keeping like their secret life hidden from their aunt, but it turns out that her aunt is from like is an elder from the whole other world. Like she is Gilgamesh's sister and is one of the first people that Prometheus made, and actually was Abraham the Mage's wife. And like all this crazy stuff happens because like Josh is with Dare and Billy the Kid and Nicolo over on the island, and they're trying to wake up the monsters and release the monsters for their own advantage. And everybody else kind of collects at her aunt's house and gets tablets from Abraham about what they need to do to defeat everybody and kind of like bring about the events that happen, because he saw in the future that if the fall of Danutalis didn't happen, then humans would like never exist. Or like, well, humans do exist, but they never would have became what they were today. Like technology never would have advanced. Like there still would have been gods in the old sense, and like humans would still be considered more like servants and slaves, and like the second class citizens kind of a deal. And then Billy and Nicolo actually betray them and like try to lock up Dee and Virginia, and they end up going back into the past to fight to sink Danu Talis, and that is when you find out that Isis and Osiris are the twins' parents. Which Isis and Osiris are like bad guys. Like they are like the overarching like all people fear them bad guys. And like Josh shows up and he's like, why is my mom and my dad here? So that whole whirlwind was crazy, and that's like where it ends. So I gave this a book of 4. Like I liked it. It was fine. The last book is The Enchantress. This one I only gave a 3.5. Like, Isis and Osiris are like kind of mean and rude to the twins. Like, there's a whole little revolution uprising. Turns out they're not actually their parents. Like, they kidnapped them from completely different times and like brought them to the 21st century, and then like decided to raise them there as their own. So they're not even brother and sister, which is crazy. And you find out that like they're the original because there's like the legend that there was 2 twins who brought down Danu Talis, and then there's this series of generations of twins after, until you find the people that are strong enough just like the original twins. But then you find out that they were actually the original twins, and they went back in the time, and they're the ones who sank Danu Talis to begin with. And like, I'm not a big fan of time travel in books. Like, not my cup of tea, so I didn't really like that explanation at all. But then there's like a giant army of gliders that all the people that we know and love are like fighting for in 2, and like Virginia Dare becomes the leader of the people to fight for their own freedom, and Dee gets super old, and then you find out that like Isis and Osiris weren't even elders, they were Earth Lords, which are like the people before, and they were just gonna use the twins to bring back their own race. And Nitin, who is Scatty's sister's like kind of sort of boyfriend, almost dies, but then he gets brought back to life by their aunt, and they had to wake the spider to fight all of these creatures from getting off this island, and Billy ends up getting injured because of that, which actually was kind of sad. And then they like kill all the elders that are in the normal time trying to like fight for what's right. Like, they all die, and then you end up finding out that Josh is the hook man who put everything into motion for the last 10,000 years to make sure that they end up going back. So, not my cup of tea. 3.5. Not my cup of tea. Honestly, I'll probably get rid of this series to open up room on my bookshelf, because, like, it was fine. It was a fine book series. Not terribly impressed by the book series. It was just a fine book series. So, moving on to some better books. The first book that I read that wasn't a part of the series on vacation was actually The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I've been wanting to read this book since it came out. I remember it coming out in Target when I worked there, and I was like, oh, I really want to read this book. And I also, when me and my friend Ryan, we were having like our last day together before I left the state to come to Texas, and we went to a bookstore, and I bought The Master of Jin, which I talked about in my first Rate My Bookshelf video that went up this month. I also almost thought about getting The Midnight Library, but I didn't. I ended up getting the book that I bought instead. But like, I've always wanted to read it since then. And this is about it's about Nora, and she ends up dying, and she goes to the Midnight Library, which is where essentially every version of your life exists as a book. And she has the opportunity to try out all of these different lives. And you find out that she actually ends up killing herself because her and her brother's relationship is on the rocks. I don't think her parents are still alive either, but they might be alive. But like, she essentially is working a dead-end job at like 30 years old. She's made a lot of mistakes in her life. She's super depressed. She turned down being a rock star for because she got panic attacks, and she turned it down because her fiance at the time was like, if you go to be a rock star, like, I'm gonna break up with you. And she didn't want to do that, so she wanted to stay with him, and then they end up breaking up anyways. And so, like, she's just not very happy in her life. And that was like 5 years ago. Now she's working like a kind of deadbeat, dead end job. Just trying to pay the bills. And then she gets fired from her job. And then her cat dies. And so, like, she's just like, wow, like, I really have nothing to live for. And she tries to kill herself. And then she ends up in the Midnight Library. And she gets the chance to, like, live out lives and try and change the things that she might have regretted. And if she picks a life that she's really happy with, she ends up just becoming a part of that life, essentially. And that's what she'll do for the rest of her life. And so, like, she takes back what would have happened if I would have became a rock star. And, like, if she did, her brother ends up killing himself. And she's like, okay, well, what if I became an Olympic swimmer like my dad wanted? And she finds out that her dad is still alive, but her mom died. And she still tried to kill herself in that life. And, like, she finds along the way, and she's like, oh, what if I would have stayed together with my ex? And, like, he wanted to have a pub in, like, the countryside. And you find out that he ended up cheating on her after they made this pub together. And, like, so, like, each life that she tries, like, that are, like, big regrets in her life, she realizes that she was probably, like, that she was better off not living those lives. And that's kind of the point of this book, is, like, don't feel regrets, because you are probably better off not living that life that you are yearning for, that you're pining for. Like, you're beating yourself up now about choices that were made, but if you hadn't made the choices that you made, you probably would be in a worse situation. Is kind of the situation. It's like, don't mourn things because you don't know how it would have turned out. Like, she was supposed to go to Australia with her friend and she didn't, and so now her and her friend don't talk anymore. But in the version when she went to Australia with her friend died in a car accident. So it's like, that's the big overarching theme. And she finally gets a life that she thinks is perfect. Like, she has someone that she loves. They've been together for a really long time. They have kids together. Like, she's writing books like she wants to. And she goes back to where she used to live to, like, check on her old neighbor that she was doing things for, to, like, see how things are going. And, like, you find out that, like, her brother is in love and married to this guy. And the kid that she taught piano lessons for, that the mom fired her for because she was in such a crappy situation, she wasn't being a good teacher, like, that kid ends up joining, like, a gang and getting in a ton of trouble without her. Like, the man who was her neighbor, who she brought medicine to, like, he died because she wasn't there to help him. Like, she finds out that because she didn't live the life that she did, all of the good things she did for these people just don't exist anymore. And she starts to realize that while she loves the life that she's in and she really wants it, all of the things that she's done really had meaning to other people that she didn't see, that were really important. So she ends up going back to her old life, and, like, she just tries to right the wrongs of, like, you gotta keep your kid in piano lessons. Like, she talks to her brother about the situation that, like, they've been going through. And so, like, he tells her, like, oh yeah, like, I was just really, like, depressed afterwards, but I'm doing better now. Like, I'm not drinking anymore now. And, like, oh, there's this guy at the gym that I like. And she's like, who's the same guy that he ends up marrying in, like, the other life. And she's like, do it. Like, get on a date with him now. And so I ended up liking it. And it really hit home for me this month too, because, like, I had some things happen, and normally I'm a person where I'm like, oh, I don't have any regrets. Like, everything that I've done has gotten me to where I am today. And like I had some regrets about some decisions that I did make this month, and wishing that I had made different decisions. And so it kind of pushed me to live my life so that I wouldn't be worried about those regrets when I got back from vacation. So, good book, totally recommend. And it's a quick, easy read too. Like, I think it's less than 300 pages. Like, yeah, it's 288 pages. So this is like a quick read for people. So,